Now, a total of 46 countries from around the world that made investments in Zimbabwe in 2023 could be an indication of the growing interest in this market. Deputy Chief Secretary in the Office of the President and Cabinet, Willard Manungo, applauded the milestone at the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency Stakeholder Input Forum in Harare on Tuesday.
I'm advised that during the year 2023, we witnessed a strong recovery of investor interest into Zimbabwe, with businesses from 46 countries coming into Zimbabwe to invest. This, ladies and gentlemen, represents a rebound of 35% over the previous year, 2022. A perusal of our investor source markets shows that when one looks at the source markets, the People's Republic of China remaining a key investment partner, more notably in participating in mining investments. This was followed by investments into manufacturing, and the investment data that we have also confirms new investors coming in from within the SADC region. They can cite here South Africa and Botswana, and then beyond, I can also cite other investors being attracted into Zimbabwe from the United Arab Emirates.
Of late, questions have been raised as to the ease of doing business in Zimbabwe. What challenges do investors face, and are there any that have been licensed at all?
In total, I'm advised that 650 new investors were licensed during the year 2023, representing a significant growth of 130% when related to the previous year, 2022. Furthermore, the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency is reporting an 8% growth in issuance of licenses during the second quarter of 2024, reflecting growing investor confidence, most notably through the online DIY licensing portal. I commend all stakeholders for their continued interest and participation in the country's investment initiatives as we strive to improve the ease of doing business in terms of the environment in Zimbabwe. And this is critical for us to attract and nurture sustainable investment inflows into our economy.
Staying with the story, we are now joined by our business correspondent, Eben Mabunda, as we get a bit more of analysis on this issue. Eben, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, my first question is, Zimbabwe recorded a 35% increase in the number of countries that invested in the country in 2023, and that is compared to 2022. What could be the factors that led to this?
Well, good evening. Of course, quite a significant jump in terms of the number of countries that invested in Zimbabwe in 2023. And some of the factors would hinge around the recovery in terms of the global economy from the economic impact of the COVID-19, which saw the global economy getting into a period of slowed down economic growth, of course, steered by China, which took a little bit longer to exit from the COVID-19 pandemic than the rest of the world. But also at the same time, we have seen a growing interest in terms of Zimbabwe's key economic pillars outputted, to speak in terms of the agricultural resources in Zimbabwe, the mining sector. Zimbabwe is home to over 60 commercially exploitable minerals, and also the discussion by African countries around the African Continental Free Trade Area and the possibilities that could be unlocked as a result of that. So all of these factors, plus as well some of the efforts that have been taken by various investment agencies in Zimbabwe to tell a beautiful story about Zimbabwe to the international community, have also played a key role at transforming some of those aggregates.
Now, even up to 615 new investors are said to have been registered during the same period. But is Zimbabwe doing enough to improve the ease of doing business?
Well, the answer is yes, and the answer is also no. Let me start with the yes part. Various initiatives have been put in place to try and make it easy, especially for international investors to invest in Zimbabwe. ZIDA has laid platforms both electronically or digitally, to put it across that way, as well as also they've got various teams on the ground that aim to make it easier for international investors as and when they get into Zimbabwe to make their investment or to prospect for investment in this country. At the same time, I've seen a lot of investment drives and roadshows that have been carried out by different institutions: the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency, the country's tourism sector, and several other agencies that have gone out there to put a good message out there about Zimbabwe, and also some reforms that are somewhat strategic to the advancement of the Zimbabwean economy. Now, on to the no part. This is where issues of policy consistency get into the matrix, macroeconomic stability. So when you look at that flip side of the coin, there remains much ground to be covered. And also, just to give an example in terms of the tourism subsector, where it is that players in the sector complain that there are up to 17 tax heads which players in Zimbabwe's tourism sector have to deal with within that particular confinement, I would put it. So these then become areas that need to be improved, that need to be worked on, so that Zimbabwe can actually get to attract even more foreign direct investment. Even when you look at in terms of the stats, we are looking at figures that are north of about 2.5 billion United States dollars that has come through, of course, in 2023, and also some of the potential investments that are still in the pipeline. So much ground to be covered, but a positive overall at this point.
So now what has also been established is that China has remained a big investor, and countries like South Africa, Botswana, and the Middle East have also come into the fray. What does this tell us about the country?
Well, taking center stage, of course, where China and, of course, some of the Middle Eastern investors is pretty much, again, Zimbabwe's mineral resources. We've seen a lot of investment coming in from China where the lithium resource is concerned. A huge chunk of investment in terms of the iron and steel subsector of Zimbabwe, of course, with the Denson and, of course, the Manise iron and steel plant, and several other investments that are taking place within that particular bracket. But to bring in South Africa into the matrix, a huge number, a significant chunk of the players in Zimbabwe's platinum group metals subsector have parentage in South Africa by several listed companies: Anglo American Platinum, Impala Platinum, Sibanye Stillwater, that have operations in Zimbabwe through Unki Mine, Sibanye, Unki Mine, Mimosa, beg your pardon, Zimplats in no particular order. And so there would be a very strong linkage between Zimbabwean platinum mining companies and those that are listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. But also, to speak in terms of Botswana, diamond then becomes a resource that is common in the two jurisdictions, hence, of course, that interaction at that particular level. We could also speak even in terms of the tourism subsector of Zimbabwe, where Botswana and Zimbabwe have some common interests that are to be enjoyed, and not forgetting also just how we've got Citco that's got a listing here in Zimbabwe as well as on the Botswana Stock Exchange. So possibilities, of course, and that explains some of those figures and why we have got those countries, China, those Middle Eastern countries, South Africa, as well as Botswana.
Konapo, ipapo pa ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294, the place to be.